Good afternoon and welcome to SportWorks Talks. My name is Christian Page and with me this afternoon is Mikel Thomas. Hi, Mikel.
How you doing?
Good. Great to have you with you. Great to have you with us. And hello to everybody around the world who has had the opportunity to join us. From Beijing to New York City to Hamburg to Lausanne. Great to see you with us this afternoon. You're in for a really inspiring presentation talk by Mikel. We've had a great opportunity to catch up today and this morning, and we've got some really interesting insights into the journey of an athlete, what you've been through, and for me personally, I think it's going to be quite inspiring to hear and to share what Mikel's journey's been like. So you're not here to listen to me. Just a little bit of housekeeping. As always, we do our talks. Mikel's going to speak for about 20 minutes, and then we're going to launch into some Q&A at the end. So please pop your questions into the chat, and we'll get to those as many as we can at the end. Like I say, great to have you all with us, and now I'm going to hand over to Mikel.
Nice, pleasure. Thank you guys so much for joining us this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world.
All right.
So yeah, we have the opportunity here to really talk about athletes transition. And if I had to, I guess, make it a title of a book from where my life is right now, I would say it's Refined by Fire. To give a little background, a little bit for those who don't know me, you can see in the next slide that I had the pleasure of being a 3-time Olympian representing the beautiful Twin Islands of Trinidad and Tobago. It's a little fancy accent that I have from 2008 in Beijing, shout out to Beijing, to London and Rio, and God willingly in pursuit of Tokyo next year. So that'll be 4, which is absolutely amazing. In that journey, I've been able to set the national record, even though I've been running for the world record since I've discovered it, but I really shot for the stars and landed on the moon, and saying that I'm one of the top 100 to have ever competed in my event thus far. But records are meant to be broken. Let's see if we can make that change a little bit. Some few international medals and some championships along the way, but it's been a really cool journey. To kind of understand how it started for me, honestly, I had almost like a Michael Jordan moment, where the first time I was introduced to the sport, I was told I wasn't good enough. There was a sports day, and they had athletes who were getting the opportunity to represent the community at the national stadium, and I wasn't selected for whatever reason. Years later, my family immigrated to New York City, where I was really introduced to organized sport. And there, the journey started pretty abruptly. I pretty much was running in the hallways in high school, and I got caught by the dean, and I had 2 choices, detention or track practice. Let's just say the least. You could kind of tell how that story kind of ended. But I'm so grateful for that man for giving me an opportunity. Growing up in the inner city, just having another option and a choice. And this is just my story of how track and field has allowed me to see the world and discover myself. In that, I truly believe that sport has an amazing opportunity to deliver an immaculate set of skills that make a hard impact. And specifically when we talk about athlete transition, it's very hard to try to take one thing that you've literally become the best at and then try to translate that to something else. It's not direct, but there's so many mental, physical, character skills that we're able to really transit over from sport into the real world. And I think if more athletes, businessmen and women, corporations, organizations had the opportunity to understand that in an athlete, you literally have a perfect seed. Everything that you would want out of an employee, out of a team player, out of an individual who has goal-setting abilities, able to perform under pressure with discipline, hard work, commitment, self-started, all of these things literally is wrapped up in someone who's been trained in a profession for the last umpteen years. And then if you just take the time to invest in them, just give them a little bit of time, opportunity, I think we can have a great impact in many fields, not just in the world of sport, but from firefighting and public service to politics, sport administration, and even medicine. I've seen so many athletes who have been able to take that journey differently, and hopefully we can offer perspective no matter where you are in the spectrum, whether you're starting in sport, exiting sport, or have the opportunity to influence sport. There's still ways that we can engage athletes in a way that can help them as much as we look at sport and the athletes as they're developing and as they're performing, there's a gap as we transition. Because in that, life has its ebbs and flows, it rises and it falls. And for me and for many others, sometimes the transition isn't a choice. I could say I'm lucky enough to where a lot of the things that I've been able to do were choices, but I truly am one that believes that either you make the decision or the decision will be made for you. And we're so taught to have our minds set and focus on a particular task for years in order for us to truly be successful, that we miss a lot of the world that's happening around us, to the point where we're actually faced with an outside obstacle. It's now kind of throws us off of how are we actually supposed to be able to adapt and overcome this. And then who are we away from it? I've been times where I've lost contracts or I was injured and I had to really discover who I was away from the sport. Very spiritual based, so being able to understand who I am as a man, as an individual, with my gifts, not just physically, was able to help me kind of understand. And so strangely enough, this picture was way back in 2015 when I was at the World Championships, expected to medal, came from the Pan Am with 2 medals, went to the NACEC Championship and broke the record. And at the first hurdle, life happens. I can say I've been able to clear obstacles for a living for the last, showing my age a little bit, 12 years, 15 years, which is an amazing thing just to even accomplish 1 Olympic Games, let alone 3. But a lot of it, it comes with different motivations. Every game for me was a different motivation. Beijing was an opportunity to be the first, to experience something brand new like never before. London, I had something to prove. It's my second time. You have to go for it, you know? And in Rio, when I was actually ready to perform, I don't think the games wanted me to. Everything from the massive rain delay to reruns at the Olympic Games, to what I think I jammed, probably fractured, but I jammed my ankle literally in my pre-meet before my first round. And I'll take you back into this. Literally, we were there in one of the training grounds, and you got to go through your motions. Your dress rehearsal is what you've been coming for. And again, in 2015, we broke the national record. We made amazing things happen. So 16 is my year. I'm at my prime. I can feel everything. So we go into the games, and everything started clicking. But there were some things that were different in the organizations at that games versus every other time that I've raced in Brazil. And in that, there was a moment where you try to race, at least your pre-meet, around the time where you actually compete. And so it was an evening for the first round of the Olympics. And in that, so you try to make your pre-meet at around the same time. So it's evening, light is setting. I have a mild stigmatism, so, and the room is dark, I have to wear glasses. But I don't know if you've ever been to Rio in the summertime, it's kind of humid. So it's not really the best condition for glasses. So we were trying to get the stadium lights to actually come on during my pre-meet, but for some reason, every person that we talked to didn't know who to talk to or how to get the lights on. And so I have a mild stigmatism. I try to put my glasses on. I can't see. I'm trying to get ready for my pre-meet. I only have X amount of time. So I make a rash decision that I have to just train. And I could not see the first hurdle. And I literally stopped as hard as I could going through one of my runs, and I jammed my ankle. This is 2 days before the first round of Rio Olympics. Take me up, coach. Like, I have to go. There's no way you could say no to this moment. We were able to, by the amazing help and support of our medical team, get me to the point where I could put pressure back on my leg and I could perform. Had an amazing pre-meet and warm up after that. And literally, as we go in, I think rain from heaven came down. Like the biggest rain delay I've ever, a tropical storm just decided that it wanted to sweep in this place. And so we're there underneath the stadium for about 30 minutes and my body's completely cold. I'm not the athlete that warms up gradually. I'm on or off. And in that, we were not made aware of what was going on. Again, it's evening time. It just rained. So glasses is out the picture. I can't wear it. Rain is still falling. So I'm like, what's about to happen. I literally went out there and ran off a field. So even though I may have been physically ready, had my obstacles along the way, it didn't work well. And honestly, that was probably the beginning of when I had to face so many injuries along my career. 2017, we made the World Championship, but I was battling a hamstring injury the whole time. So because I was just constantly being aware of that, for the first time, I felt like I wasn't physically able. And at 26, 27 now, I'm so used to being able to run through walls. I felt, like Superman for so long, being able to do the near impossible. And for the first time, I was realizing that I might have a limitation. It's hard to admit that I'm human. And in that is the first time I really started to battle, like, is this really what I want? And I think that was the beginning of my mental and emotional sabbatical. But that's something that you always have to ask yourself, no matter what it is that you're transitioning in. Because I would say 2016 was the beginning of that for me. That you can't always go back and change the beginning, but you can always start where you are and change the end. And I knew I had to do something about what was going to happen from henceforth. But again, sport is the beauty of sport is you don't know what's happening. It just sucks when you're on the boat, where it's literally the ebbs and flows of life, from making the Olympic Games in 2012, where I literally was coaching myself and coaching other athletes in a small junior college in Kansas, Cloud County. If you look up in the middle of nowhere, it's there. And I literally was spending time on a farm, getting ready for the Olympic Games, running in the hallways of our school. That's all I had. And so to be able to make the Olympic team in 2012, it was almost like a relief. That it was the first time that I realized that sometimes we place mental barriers. First time I actually got a chance to work with a sports psychiatrist. And in that, I realized that I put so much mental energy in the idea of making the Olympic Games that once I got there, my body was tapped. I was emotionally drained. I didn't know what to do after that. I had set this goal of making the team that I never actually saw myself doing anything once I got there. Thank God again for actually being able to find help and support, to being able to work out that kind of mental barriers that I was starting to create in myself, to the point where in 2013, boom, national record, being able to be on the circuit and running diamond leagues, being able to travel the world and earn a living. That's different, especially for years. Even though in 2008, I made the Olympic team, I was still in college. And it literally took me till 2012 to be at a level to where I can actually make another Olympic Games. It was just years of just feeling stuck, having to figure it out. But I remained relentless in it, because if I had stopped my career in 2008, I would have been a one-time Olympian. My best at the time was 13.5. If I had stopped in 2009, my best would have been 13.5. If I had stopped in 2010, my best would have been 13.5. If I had stopped in 2011, my best would have been 13.5. Again, notice I just could not break through for whatever reason. And I remember the summer of 11, when I went back to New York, I had to make a decision, because now I'm out of college. So I have to find money, and I'm not in a position yet where I was actually earning from the sport. And I remember I went back to New York, and I went to my family, and I had a job interview. I think it was for something like a security guard. I just needed to make some sort of money. And I looked at my resume, and at the time, all I knew was sport. All I did was sport. I volunteered constantly, because I was able to at least ask a lot of questions along the way. I was very inquisitive, very curious about what was going on in my body and how sport was working and why certain decisions were being made. And that's part of something that I felt was pivotal as I continued throughout my career. But in that, I was starting to question myself, like, why am I actually here? And I walked out of that interview. I thanked the person for their time, but I was like, I don't belong here. And I remember going back home to my mom and explaining that story to mom, and her telling me with all love in her heart, that dreams don't pay bills. This was a heartbreaking moment for me, to tell you the truth, because I already made an Olympic team in 2008, Mom. Like, you see me. I was your son on TV. But I came to literally this point where, and sometimes you have to make this decision, is where are you actually going to put this seed, this dream? And I was willing to bet on myself, even though I had New York City, the world in my background. I decided that my prayer with God was, place me anywhere where you want me to be. And I had one job offer at that junior college in Kansas. And I was like, if that's the place where I'm going to grow and really have the opportunity to seize this dream, I was willing to do it. It paid off. And what was beautiful about it was because now that I was accountable to the team, they made me accountable to my craft. It was something I never really experienced before, because every time they would come to the track, they would see me finishing up a workout. And I would pick up, put my clothes back on, dust myself off, wipe off the sweat and the throw up and all of that. And I would literally be like, your turn. And because they saw me do everything that I asked of them, it created a level of trust that really meant something to me, that allowed me to push even harder. Because I knew if I gave just less than what I knew I was capable of, somebody was going to see it. And then I had lost my validity in that moment to say, like, trust me. Because that's what you do with a coach. You literally say, here's my goal, here's my dream, here's my aspiration, get me there. And everything in between, I'll trust you with. And because I had that element, I was able to really dive into my craft. And that's what made 2012 successful. But I was so locked in on something particular that once I got there, I didn't know what to do. Because training by yourself, there's so much emotional and spiritual energy that you place into it, that it was just like a breaking. 2012, 2013, I literally missed the world championship by 2/100th of a second. That is a dip of the chest. I should have done more push-ups that day. It's just so close, but yet so far. And in that, I made a decision that I lost that spot by the reigning world record holder, Aries Merritt. And so I decided again to bet on myself. And I'm like, I'm going to train with him. So I moved to Phoenix, Arizona in 2014. Actually, I didn't do that until the end of 2014. But leading into 2014, even though we had the amazing success we did, again, as you can see, ebbs and flows of life. Part of the elite funding program that was allowing me to do some amazing things, but in that same sense, wasn't working as efficiently as it possibly could. So we see the medals, we see the athletes raise the flag, but you don't see the gaps along the way. And I was part of it. On my way to represent Trinidad and Tobago at the Commonwealth Games in Scotland, I was getting phone calls and emails that I'm being evicted because my funding wasn't yet released and my time was up. And so it hurt my heart so much that I'm literally on my way to represent my nation. And it felt like at home my nation wasn't representing me, because I did everything that I needed to do on paper. I'm the reigning national record holder. I'm ranked in the top 30 in the world, but I don't have a flight to come back to. I don't know what home is going to be. So obviously Glasgow was a disaster. It didn't go as well as I hoped. And in an interview, it came out that my mind is elsewhere. I don't know where I'm going to sleep. I don't know what's happening to my stuff. I have to leave Scotland. And by the time that article came out, I had a lot of questions to answer. And I decided to face it. You know, at the time, a lot of athletes were being blacklisted and being told to be quiet. And I decided to do something about that, because at this point, I have nothing else to lose. I mean, I literally am homeless. I have nowhere else to go. So I decided that I was going to say something. And not in the sense to point fingers, but to share my story, that I love this nation with everything that I have and that I am. And I just hoped for a little sense of reciprocity in that. And there were other athletes that were able to come along and recognize that we have a shared experience. And through that, we were able to get together, build a campaign, bring information, bring awareness, and bring a form of change. Very ambitious at the time. I tried to unionize the athletes. The country wasn't just ready for that, but strangely enough, I now sit on the board of the Athletes Association. And so I think sometimes our failures, our L's, our losses are just lessons. And I think that was a good opportunity for me to understand, but I knew that there was a gap in my knowledge. Partly the reason why I'm here today. 15, we back on it. Again, I made a decision in 13 that I'm not going to lose again. So I decided to bet on myself, and I want to train with the best. Moved to Phoenix, became a part of Altus, and we were able to have an amazing amount of success. So again, we went from literally being, where am I going to sleep, to being on top of a podium in a matter of a year. I'm still the same person. I may have gotten physically better, but there are structures and things that we can in place around the athlete, giving them exposure, protecting them in certain ways that will allow them to be successful. 16, tough fight, but it started the questioning process for me of who am I away from the sport and what am I going to do next? And so to find that answer for me, it really was about, with all that was going on, with all of the emotions, learning how to silence the outside and take some time to just listen to myself, to my own heart, to my own thoughts. And I remember, I think I was walking in the park. Again, I was living in Arizona at the time. So just think of beautiful mountains cutting through the sunset. And I was able to hear like this small voice inside, like, we've always wanted to be a firefighter. And I believe that it was my heart and my desire to serve. I've gotten so much from the sport, even being troublesome youth, someone gave me an option to choose something different. It was that gratitude out of everything that I've been able to experience that I'm like, I want other people to have that sense of hope, to experience the beauty and the power of life. I was just able to do it in the arena of sport. So I was like, I wanted to do that. And so I decided that, you know what, maybe I will. So I decided to become a firefighter. Strangely enough, and then you can click to that. Yeah, I enjoyed it with every ounce of my being. I grew up in New York City, and so I was there during 9/11. I come from a line of servicemen, fathers in the military, uncles, firefighter. I love the idea of committing yourself to something bigger, representing my nation, representing my community. I really wanted to humanize it. I'll admit, because of all of the frustration that I've had through the world of sport, that I was looking for stability also. I was looking for something safe. Strangely enough, firefighting was safe. It was safe for me because it was stability. It was me being entrenched in the community. It was me knowing where money was coming from. It was me knowing what my assignment was. But even in that, some beautiful things happened. I made some amazing connections. I saw how ugly life is. I've seen some things, smell some things that you would not want to experience, that I can still imagine, taste to this day. But I've also seen how beautiful life is and why it's worth fighting for. And I've seen people unite for a cause of many different age, colors, races, and creeds, because fire doesn't care where you're from. Neither does death. And I've been into rooms where it's pitch black and the only thing that you can hear is the crackling sound of fire, and you're about to dance with that. With 60, 70 pounds of gear, I'm walking into a room not knowing what's about to come around the corner, but I feel prepared because it's 2 in and 2 out. You were never alone. That's something that's beautiful that I enjoyed about serving as a firefighter, and something that is an element from sport of being a part of a team, but that was really refined in that opportunity in being a firefighter. But even in that, I just kept feeling and kept hearing a calling for the sport. Again, this was kind of like my escape. It was my relief for the moment I needed time away from what I was told constantly that I needed to do X in order to eat. Literally, you'll be going to races and not knowing if you will be able to pay your rent, this cell phone bill, gas, or buy groceries. You had to decide. And if you don't make the podium, you can't do any of that. That was life. People see the trips and running around the world, but they don't know at what cost. Yes, people speak of the idea of sacrifice. It hurts my heart to this day that I missed every single graduation from my family. I wasn't there. I've missed birthdays. I've missed the ability to have intimate relationships, because even if I was dating somebody 6 months out of the year, I got to be going. Like, that was my reality for those 12 years at an elite level that still has its effects to this day. So being able to just silence everything and wonder, what if, and actually knock that door to discover what that interest is, and to learn that I'm actually passionate about this thing, but it was only serving me. And so there's definitely a change where your passion and your purpose don't always mix. So being a firefighter was an opportunity for me. Yes, I'm serving my community. I saved lives. I've been in rooms where we were giving talks to kids, and literally this one time, this little girl came up to me, and try not to get too emotional, but she knew me, but I didn't know who she was. So I'm thinking maybe it's from the world of sports. Maybe she saw me run somewhere. I've done talks at other schools before. But she told me I saved her brother. And I'm like, what? How do you remember little kids? Amazing, right? She remembered me from one night, 3 o'clock in the morning. We come in, and her brother was having an asthma attack, and we just did our job. We ride in, we ride out. No names, disappear in the middle of the night. We do our job, we salute. But it's the fact that you were making an impact to someone who's, for the rest of their life, they would remember this. So of course you try not to, you gotta be a manly man in the moment, but it's powerful to know that you're actually making a difference. But that started turning the wheels of the idea that the 12 years that I had in the sport, it would be a robbery not to utilize that to make a difference. And the idea of going back to school just kept coming up, and I'm like, in my prayers, like, what does this mean? And so if I had to go back to school, Lord, I'm going to go to the #1 school in the world. Like, I tried to dare God to see what he was capable of doing. I got in. I got into AISTS, but it was the idea that, in the same sense that when in 2013, I wanted to train amongst the best. So I planted that seed where I felt it was necessary. The same sense, I had this curiosity that there's more to this world of sport that I needed to learn, needed to know. And so you have to believe that there's a calling for all of us. I know every human being has value and purpose. The real work of our lives is to become aware and awaken, and to answer the call, to be able to know yourself and discover other things that you might be curious about, and to actually walk down that path. For me, at first, it was honestly answering the call of firefighting that gave me the opportunity to know what my next assignment was. And that assignment brought me here to beautiful Lausanne, which, strangely enough, I was here in 2013 for the Diamond League. And I remember it was the first time that I saw snow on top of a mountain during the summertime. I'm an island boy, all right? So you have to understand, snow don't even exist where I'm from, even though I grew up in New York. But to see snow in the summertime, when it's 80 degrees, 30 Celsius for others, and you're seeing snow, it was mind-blowing for me. And so you say to yourself, it'll be nice if I live here one day. Speak it into existence, right? But for my path of where I am and what I've discovered, my transition again may have started in 2016 in understanding that this is not who I am. I don't want this to be my continual definition of myself. But curiosity existed. And I was able to follow that curiosity, actually invest. I literally remember my application for the fire department was like, what do I have to lose? That's what I told myself. I was like, if it's for me, it's for me. If it's not, it's not. That's what I did. And then I decided to invest. And so I sought out mentorship. So I looked at other firefighting groups, affinity groups that existed in where I lived. And so there was a group called Firefighters for Christ. And so I actually spent time with those men and I learned their stories. And then I realized, wow, this is another team that I can be a part of. These men actually represent something more than they're just a multi-cross. And so because of that, it was like, okay, I'm kind of interested in that. And then I actually involved and I was able to experience it. Same sense, it can work the opposite way. I remember I was trying to be an engineer in high school and I had an internship with the MTA, which is the Metropolitan Transit Authority. And I slept most of that summer in the closet claiming that I needed to do paperwork. The experience and the exposure of what I thought I was interested in allowed me to know that this is not for me. So sometimes we don't get the opportunity as athletes. We're so into what it is that we're trying to achieve that we miss the opportunity to discover, well, what do I really like and who I am away from the scoreboard or the results, because in the same sense that can cause a lot of pain. I've been a part of races where I've run my heart out after traveling 12 hours and the newspaper article is telling the world that I failed because I came fourth. That's telling the results, it's not telling the story. And so I remember we have great men from Trinidad and Tobago, from Shaka Hislop's, Otto Bolden, who have done some amazing things in the world of broadcasting. And I used to watch them speak because there's someone on TV that looked and sounded just like me. And so it was inspiring. And so I used to pause when they interviewed athletes and I would try to answer and see if I was able to do it. And so I learned how to tell a story. And even in that, that's what allowed me the opportunity to be here, because when you don't know what to do, you do what you know. And I've had years of being able to tell stories and trying to figure it out, from when I lost funding to learning about sponsorship and how to connect what it is that I'm about and what I care about with companies and organizations to try to blend that. And, oh, do you pay me for it? Okay, that's really cool. That's great, because I have some bills I need you to help me with. But just all of that kind of together, by being able to explore those things, I've been able to develop a huge set of those soft skills and things that have made some hard impacts. I say raising $20,000 in 3 weeks is a hard impact. And I did it because of storytelling. And learning those things, I think, will help athletes being able to see who they are in different phases of their career, so that when you have the opportunity to kind of transition, and even if you're not an athlete, because transition just exists in life, to being able to know what it is that you're caring about. And for me, I've come to a point where it's mostly about characteristics, not just the physical, because I can only be an athlete for X years. But it's the idea of, what is it about firefighting that gravitated me? It was the chance to serve, the opportunity to motivate and encourage. And so what things in my life allow me to do those things is what I really get a chance to pour myself into. So being able to discover that has helped me a lot, to discover what are things that I'm passionate about, and then also the things that I feel I have purpose in. And I think there sometimes we have the conflict because they don't always match, in all honesty. Your passion and your purpose don't always match. But I truly believe doing things that you perform well, that makes you happy, is your passion, your passion. But when it comes to making a difference in the lives of others, that's when it becomes your purpose. So when your passion, the thing that brings you joy, is able to do as much or if not greater for other people, that's a purpose. And so as much as I was able to identify, I love to serve, but I have this huge skill set from the world of sport, and I understand it from both as an athlete and as an administrator and as a marketer and as a digital engager and as a community representative. And I have all of these things. Is how do I kind of put that in a pot and cook up something delicious? And that's what it is, because this may have been my recipe, but if you've ever noticed, every time you give someone the same ingredients, it's going to taste a little bit different. And so it's just a perspective of whatever it is that in your journey that you have, that your unique set of skills that life has afforded you, that is what is your call to do. Because we're all called to do something very particular. And if you don't do it, then who's going to? Because there's only one you. So being able to understand what your passion and your purpose is and finding a way to blend it will literally take you on a journey worth living. I can say that so far. And it will allow you to discover some beautiful possibilities. In the idea of me coming here to Lausanne and being a part of AISTS and the immaculate group of students that I've been able to, not even students, leaders of sport industry that I've been able to just be around, because iron sharpens iron. The same way training with the world record holder allowed me to break the national record. The fact that I'm in a class of 29 with 23 different nationalities, I'm exposed to the world of sport in a beautiful new way. From exposure to sporting organizations to volunteering at a Winter Youth Olympics. Again, the island boys up in the mountains, it was wonderful. It was beautiful. And shout out to Trinidad and Tobago's first Winter Youth Olympian, Beijing 2022, I believe in you. And being able to work with her, wow, that was amazing to see the next generation. That's what excites me, to know that I can plant or water the seed of whatever their dreams and aspirations and hopes can be. To being a part of all things in collaboration with the IOC, into an amazing team here now at ITA. I would have never known these things if I didn't discover it. So dear athlete, whoever you are, wherever you are, and for those that have the opportunity to influence as a parent, as a stakeholder within the sporting ecosystem, or even as a friend, there are things that I hope that you would be able to glean from this. Again, it's not the answer, it's a perspective. And so for me, if I can do it differently, I would take more time to discover who I am away from the sport and what are the things that I actually care about. Define myself in more things than just the results, and build a community around that. Friends, family, being able to discover and have that kind of build you up in those other aspects. Continuing to believe in yourself, in your hard work, in your skills, in everything that you've experienced, even to this point, proves that you have more victories than losses because you're still alive today. Plan. I'm very pragmatic, so I like the word plan. But plan as much as you can, because we know of any profession that firefighting has, not firefighting, even that, but every profession has an X date. Actually, this helps me really bring it home. In every profession, you know there's an X date. We prepare for retirement, but not in sport. We don't, from the very inceptions, you think when you sign on to a job, there's the 401k, there's a life plan, there's those things that are part of your onboarding. But we don't do that within the world of sport. There's no onboarding process. There's no what do you do after. Even though you know if you had 5 years at the international level, you did really good. You know that there's an end date. But we don't get enough opportunity to actually plan for that. And in that, I feel like we can also, between the community, seek support, seek mentorship, psychology, sports psychiatrist if you need to, performance coach if you need to, being able to understand what it is that you can see somebody in a position that you would potentially want to be, or doing something that you may have been interested in. Again, answering those questions along the way, that what if? I think that can hopefully change your experience for whenever this transition is, because it's almost like a relationship. It takes a little time to kind of move from one end to the other, but at some point you can still own your experience in that. So to kind of wrap things up now, this is one of my favorite quotes from the book, The Alchemist, and one of my stories that kind of really sums up what it's like to chase after something but transition in the same sense. Is tell your heart that the fear of suffering is worse than suffering itself, and that no heart has ever suffered when it goes in search of its dreams, because every second in the search of its second's encounter is that with God and eternity. I truly believe it's not just about what I have been able to achieve, but who I became in the process. That's my greatest reward. Thank you.
I'm going to slide back in beside you here, and thank you for an awesome presentation. We squeezed in there. Let me just say, we'll stop the slides and whoops. Fantastic. What a great presentation. Thank you. And so many gems.
You think so?
Oh yeah, just a few. You know, and I've been really fortunate. Today we've had some good long conversations, and I want to say thank you for sharing your journey, and also that it isn't all the bed of roses.
No.
It's not easy. Like any journey, I think, whatever your career path, I think one of the great takeaways is about transition. We're in constant transition.
Absolutely.
And that's a great realization for anybody in any given career. And for me also, I want to say thanks, because I shared with Mikel this morning, I've spent a lot of years working in and around the Olympic Games and very major sport events. And one of the unfortunate things that I feel for me and sometimes my teams is that we actually don't get to experience with the athletes. We're responsible for creating the stage. We're responsible for making sure that everything is frictionless as possible so that you guys can go out there and do your best. But I feel like there's some really good opportunities, and we talked about this morning, is how we can perhaps bring some of that together, because I think there's some great learnings from the athletes. I've got some great learnings from today's conversations that I will take forward every day, and I think there's some great opportunities for all of us, for everybody who works in sport, not just the athletes. We are a community and we are an ecosystem, so we need to be there for each other. So thank you for sharing your time today. So, and I know we've got some questions in here as well, so I'm just going to bring this in a little bit closer so we can bring this up on the chat. So greetings from everybody from Dunkirk, from Devon, from Algeria as well. Hey guys, great. We got any questions from anyone in the room here as well? We've got a few people joined us today. Hello. Some colleagues jumped in. Great to see you. I've got some questions. You raised the transition going from being an athlete, that career-driven 12 years, into the firefighting. Mm-hmm. And that was because I would assume that as an athlete, that's quite a big step.
Yeah.
And I'm also imagining that there's a lot of athletes out there at the moment going, well, what's next? What do I go and follow my next big dream?
Yeah.
How were you helped in that process? What was it?
Again, to me, is first I answered the curiosity. I allowed myself to think of something else other than the sport. Yeah. And then I sought out a mentorship. I made a deliberate effort to, hey, I'm kind of interested in learning a little bit more about firefighting. And people were actually willing to kind of welcome you in.
Cool.
I've also heard, however, from others, is sometimes we get so used to performing at X level that we think we can just make a direct, linear move over. Yeah. That's not necessarily the case. I can't just go from being a civilian to being a lieutenant in a firefighting department. That doesn't work like that. So I was humbled enough to understand that I have to come from the ground up. Yeah. And so being able to be under tutelage, learning, and then being eager to learn. Yeah. And in the same sense, as athletes have that ability. We're coachable. Yeah. And so if you don't know that, then just be what you've already done. And so continue to be coachable in that regard. And I think it will help you in whatever transition you need. Okay.
So being coachable, I think that also leads into it's being, we talked earlier about being a beginner.
Yeah.
We talked about asking lots of questions, and I was talking about my daughter, who's now 3 and in that age of why.
Yeah.
Asking lots of questions as to why, Papa.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great lesson, and I say that often. Do you see there's many opportunities for crossover in terms of mentorship of athletes into the sport business world? You've just completed the Masters at ASTS. You've got some great insights there. Do you feel that we can do more in that space?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot that you can transition. Again, sometimes we just get so one-side-track minded that we just think that it has to be something physically translated. It's the mental and the psychological skills that we've gained through the world of sport that is what can translate to the other end. And so you know how to work with engaging teams, you know how to interact with different diverse cultures, you know how to be a startup. No one can tell me that waking up at 5:30 in the morning does not make me a self-starter. Like, you have the ability to do those things in different elements. So again, it's the idea of when you don't know what to do, you do what you know. And so use those elements that have allowed you a level of success in the world of sport, the mindset, and then use that to apply to something else. So when it comes to, there's a lot of opportunities for entrepreneur coming with a creative initiative, connecting back to your sport, connecting back to your community, learning how to market yourself. There's so many opportunities in there, representatives as a community, as a sport, there's team captains who have gone on to do many different things. So there's different little steps that you can just find a way to kind of equate that into something else.
You hit on a word there, creativity.
Yeah.
How important is that to revisit that?
Yeah.
You mentioned that before.
I think it's very important. You should never lose the ability to imagine, because like we spoke before, like every great thing that has ever been done, created, or experienced all started from a thought. And so it all stems from what it is that you can think, or what it is that you're willing to believe. Those things then become your words. From your words, they become your actions. Repeated actions inform your habit, and your habit then builds your character. And so you have the ability to literally direct the course of your life if you backtrack to the thoughts. Yeah.
So keep creating and live the dreams.
Absolutely. In the same way with those who stop learning cease to exist, you know, it's the same way. You stop creating, then your life literally will be everything that it is. By having a sense of imagination, there's still wonder and a possibility that exists.
So do we need to do that more with athletes? We talked earlier about that and the challenge of the routine. It's get up, repeat. It's a lot of routine and structure. So building that into our daily lives, I think it's important. I've always been a big fan of creativity. I think it's what helps me become a great problem solver. And I'm a big advocate of promoting creativity in what we do when we're trying to solve problems and deliver events, especially. So a couple of questions popped in. So what are some tangible things we can do as professionals in sport to help athletes transition or better prepare for a transition? How can we help athletes? Great question. Thank you.
Really good question. It depends on your level, but the main thing is opportunity and conversation. First, being able to identify, like, what are you actually interested in? I think that's the main thing. And then also humanizing the process of making it, allowing that creativity to exist the whole time. We're such in a rush to perform nowadays that we feel like we have to do it now. You have to be the world champion at the junior level at 13 in order to get the contract by 16 so you can be at the Olympics at 21. I didn't start my event till 20. I made the Olympic Games that same year. It's a unique case. I know. I understand. It's not for everybody, but the impossible.
I started training again today.
But again, it's and I'm not even supposed to be in the event. I'm 5'8". It's supposed to be people who are 6 feet, and I was constantly being told that I'm too short for the event. But I had this imagination or this stubbornness that I was capable of doing it. So. You know, I've always had the opportunity between always doing school or work, and I've always been this dual athlete. So I always had something else that allowed me to express different things. And so that allowed me to see my sport expressively. So when I run, to me, it's me painting a picture. That's I say this all the time, but if I could sing a song to God, I would, but I can't, so I run. So that's my form of expression. That's my another way that I get to do it. So organizations just have to create that opportunity. Former athletes need to mentor current athletes, or even just, we do it at the nice level. We shake hands, we kiss babies, we go to the schools, we do that. But for the one that you see as the rising star, or even the ones that are around them, let's have this conversation, because a lot of people are just suffering in silence. It's the same way we treat mental health.
Yep.
It's like, why are we acting like it doesn't exist?
No.
We need to make this a part of the conversation and actually share like it was hard for me.
Yep.
2016 was the start of my transition. It's 2020.
It's,
you understand? That's a
yeah.
4-year back and forth. Am I in this? I need a break. I took a 2-year sabbatical, and now I'm back with a level of vigor. But have that conversation, because there's not just one way to have an athletic journey, but giving people options to, again, create whatever spectrum that it is.
Yeah, it's a great insight. I think there's, and as I said earlier, that for me, having worked in the industry for a long time, having missed the opportunity, I feel, to engage with athletes and to really understand their journey. And I feel that there is a real duty now to look into that and look at where we can create those opportunities for future athletes. So it's a great insight. So I want to say we're at time. We've actually run a little bit over today. So I want to say thank you so much.
Thank you
for coming in and being with us today, sharing your journey, inspiring certainly me, and I'm sure no doubt many others who have been able to join us today. So thanks so much.
Awesome.
So everybody on the who joined us on the presentation today, thank you. Great to see you from all around the world. Really grateful that you could make it. I noticed there's a couple of questions coming, which I'm going to sneak into. There's a question here from Shunga Wang. As far as you know, what resources are currently available for athletes to prepare for career transition? Great question.
Great question.
Sorry, I'm going to slip this because it is important.
Yeah. That's a really great question. For the Olympic level, of course, there's the World Olympian Association that currently exists. There are some levels within each individual structure. Honestly, there's not enough that's really being done, because they're talking about each individual sport and who they actually have access to. Yeah. The main thing that I wish was a bigger tool is just mentorship. Okay. There's not enough, because it has to be human. As many platforms that do exist, it's different when you interact with a person versus when you interact with a computer. Yeah. So there are a few athlete transition things, but most of the time, by the time you start those resources, it's a little too late. Okay. What I hope is that we will make this conversation more normalized, so that earlier in the career of an athlete, you allow them to keep that curiosity, that they already know what they would want to do. Because again, injury can happen like this, and you can be world champion, and next year you're not even on the list. Yeah. So if we have athletes at an earlier age just being prepared that I know who I am outside of sport, that at any minute when life transitions, you can pivot.
No, great insights. Again, we're going to create the opportunities. It's our job as sport workers, all right? As a community, we've really got to make that work on that. Okay, so again, thank you all for joining. The questions that we didn't get to today, we'll answer in the forum. They'll be available on sportworker.com/the forum. If you want to watch the replay of this as well, we'll be putting out a notice with all the details and the coordinates. You can also catch up with Mikel as well, which has all of his coordinates on his thank you slide. So again, thanks again, and thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next time on SportWorks Talks. Bye for now. Cheers.